right now, Julian Assange is in police custody in London. His 7-year-long standoff with authorities in the UK is over, and let's begin with new video of how it all ended this morning. Now, this is video, we should tell you, from RT, which is the news agency owned by Russian television. You can see there at the center Assange being carried out of Ecuador's embassy, where he has been holed up since 2012. And there you see being put into that police van. Here is the front of the Westminster Magistrates Court. And what we are hearing this morning is that Assange is in police custody somewhere at a central London location, a central London police station, and this is where he will appear as soon as possible. So our eyes are there. Our eyes are still outside the Ecuadorian embassy, and our eyes are right now directed at our bureau in London as Renee Filippone joins us. She's been tracking the story since it broke with me just about an hour ago. About 10:30 local time, we're hearing from WikiLeaks people themselves. What is the latest, Renee?
Well, Heather, you know, it's interesting that there had been talks that this was actually going to happen starting last week when WikiLeaks made an announcement claiming that the Ecuadorian embassy had plans to expel Julian Assange in a matter of hours and days. At that point, they were quoting a high-level source, but the Ecuadorian foreign minister denied it. However, this morning, police in the UK say they were invited into the embassy by the Ecuadorian ambassador after his government withdrew asylum. Now, he was arrested under a warrant for failing to surrender to the court, which is what specifically he's charged with here in the UK, and he will be appearing in the magistrate's office because of that. But let's take a look again at that video from his arrest this morning. Again, as you mentioned, it was shot by Russian television, and it appears he is being carried out of the embassy. He definitely didn't walk out of the embassy. A number of officers were involved in that. And if you listen quite closely to this video, about halfway through, you can actually hear him shouting, "The UK must resist." Assange hasn't left the embassy since August 2012. He's been afraid that if he steps off Ecuador's diplomatic soil, he would be arrested and extradited to the US for publishing, thousands of classified military and diplomatic cables through WikiLeaks. Now, we've also heard from the president of Ecuador today. He, in fact, published a video on Twitter in Spanish, basically explaining what's happening and what decision they made. And in that video, he says, today I announced that the discourteous and aggressive behavior of Julian Assange, the hostile and threatening declarations of WikiLeaks against Ecuador, saying, that asylum is unsustainable and no longer viable for the Ecuadorian government to keep Assange there. Now, Heather, there are accusations from the Ecuadorian government that he was in fact leaking information about the president, and it's an understatement to say that the relationship between Assange and Ecuador had grown tense. In fact, a press conference yesterday, they made claims, WikiLeaks was making claims that the Ecuadorian government was filming Assange's every move on CCTV cameras, essentially calling it a real-life Truman Show. So very tense relationship that just kept getting worse as the days progressed.
All right, Renee, in terms of reaction, we're hearing some from the British Foreign Secretary. We're going to hear, we understand, from the Home Secretary at a live briefing in what will be about 2 hours, 15 minutes for us. But the reaction starting to come in from people on Julian Assange's side, as well as other government officials. So let's go through what the reaction has been so far.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of reaction coming in very quickly to the decision to arrest Assange. His supporters are saying, this is a bad day for freedom of speech. In a series of tweets, WikiLeaks wrote this morning a number of things. First, it says that this man is a son, a father, a brother. He has won dozens of journalism awards. He's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize every year since 2010. And that powerful actors, including the CIA, are engaged in a sophisticated effort to dehumanize, delegitimize, and imprison him, claiming that Ecuador has illegally terminated Assange's political asylum in violation of international laws. We've also heard from online U.S. whistleblower Edward Snowden this morning. He's offering comment on these developments, tweeting out saying that images of Ecuador's ambassador inviting the U.K. secret police into the embassy to drag a publisher of, like it or not, award-winning journalism out of the building are going to end up in the history books. Assange's critics may cheer, but this is a dark moment for press freedom. Now, the UK government says Assange will first face proper justice here, but what's unclear is what will happen next. We know that Sweden has dropped those sexual assault charges against Assange, and he no longer faces a threat to extradition there. But Assange's supporters fear and claim they have proof that there are deals in the works to send him to the U.S. His attorney this morning claims Assange has been arrested on, in fact, a U.S. extradition request, as well as for breaching those U.K. bail conditions. That's something that we haven't been able to independently confirm, and that is just coming at this point from Assange's lawyer.
Yes, and in the next hour, we'll go to Washington and get some further detail on the American end of things, the reaction there, and what next steps from the U.S. perspective may be. Renee, thank you very much. I'm going to leave things with Renee there. A couple of things happening just as Renee was talking to us, actually. This is just breaking. We're getting new developments on it all the time. But Renee was mentioning the Swedish case, which was dropped in 2017, but we're now hearing from the Swedish Prosecution Authority. The statute of limitations in that case actually runs until the end of 2020, and at the time the case was dropped, the Swedish prosecutor said the investigation could be reopened if he returned to Sweden before that statute of limitations expired. So the woman who's initially made those sexual assault allegations against him is hoping that that is what in fact happens now, that they reopen that investigation. So that now has been raised. And what we're looking at there is the front door of the Ecuadorian embassy, from which Julian Assange was taken this morning. 10:30 local time it was when police were invited in by the Ecuadorian officials and took him out. You saw that forcibly, as he said, aged dramatically from those times we have seen him on the Ecuadorian embassy balconies, carrying, according to observers, Gore Vidal's History of the National Security State is the message he wanted to send with the book. He was taken as he yelled out what Renee was mentioning, that this has to be all stopped. We watch the magistrate's court as well. We don't know when he's set to appear. We understand it will be soon, and we will have that live coverage for you and the breaking news of the arrest of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Stay with us for more on CBC News Network.